You recently traveled to the Middle East last month, I believe, for part of the Senate Select Committee of Intelligence. One thing that I wanted to know is it worse than being reported in the States, being over there and seeing it for yourself?
Yeah, it's a very intense environment. Obviously, it's very complicated. We get bits and pieces in American media. When ISIS releases a video, we get very little information about any of the involvement, what's really happening in the Middle East, what Jordan is doing, what the Saudis are doing, what the engagement of that happens. So that's difficult to assess unless you're actually there.
Mm-hmm. Um, and so many are wanting, I know it's a very positive thought for a lot of people, but war with ISIS. And the president addressed this, talking about troops going over. Is that inevitable, going to war?
I wish it wasn't inevitable, but we have a group of people that seek to kill us and to kill other people, whether they be Christians or Jews or other Muslims they disagree with, or um, other people that have other faiths or other nations. This is a group of individuals that they want to take over the Middle East and move territory as far as they possibly can. So this would be akin to having a cancer in your body. At some point, you could ignore the cancer and say it's not really there, or you can try to actually do something about it. That's the challenge that we face right now. We are a very peace-loving nation, but we're also not afraid to defend ourselves and our allies, and we're at that spot now. What was interesting was I actually had a telephone town hall with a couple thousand Oklahomans just last night. And in that conversation, I asked them for a polling question, and we just randomly called numbers and asked for a polling question. Of those folks that called, about 95% said that we're on the wrong track with ISIS, and they think we should be more engaged in taking the fight to them rather than sitting back in the posture that we're in now. It was I was legitimately surprised that such a high number of people said we need to be more engaged in this, not less. And there's a tremendous distrust for the president and his policies because no one can figure out what the president's trying to accomplish. We seem to be trying to fight a war accidentally, not intentionally.
Also, is the government concerned, since ISIS does use social media to recruit, about homegrown terrorism?
Sure, that's always a concern. We saw that in France. We see that across Europe, quite frankly, in several places, where individuals were recruited online, were encouraged online, and ISIS and Al Qaeda actively promote themselves online and say, if you agree like we do, here's a list of people to kill, here's some ideas on how to actually kill them, and go do it and say you're part of us. Well, it's very different. Now you're not dealing with an organized infrastructure where people are actually communicating ideas and saying, okay, go attack now. They're just saying, find a good opportunity and go do it. For people that have that particular brand of Islam as their faith, and for people that are that aggressive and that twisted, they just watch for an opportunity and they go do it.
Now, I've seen the ISIS video, and one thing that stood out to me was it wasn't just a video thrown online, it was edited, it was very well organized, and so ISIS are they getting more aggressive as they continue to expand?
They do continue to expand. Also, they have their own basically propaganda arm that they put out their own videos, they put out their own images, they put out their own logos. They want to look professional in it. Now, the ISIS fighters that are actually organized in fighting, they wouldn't have Phil Memorial Stadium in Norman. I mean, it's not a huge group of fighters, but they're very brutal in their tactics. And when they kill someone, they do it in the most brutal means possible. They video it and they put it out for the world to see, to say you either need to be afraid of us and stay away from us, or you need to join us.
Is fear their biggest weapon right now?
Fear is their big issue, though I would tell you their sword and their gun is not to be trifled with as well. But they want to try to intimidate. That's how it's a relatively small group of individuals can walk into Mosul in northern Iraq, which is a huge city, and this small group, 1,000 or less, of ISIS fighters can take a city of 1 million people just by fear and intimidation.
Now, throughout history, a common enemy normally unites a group of people. Are other nations ready to help fight against ISIS?
They already are
Mm-hmm.
fighting against ISIS. You have Saudi Arabia, you have Jordan, you have other nations that are in the region, the UAE, that are actively engaged in trying to help defend the region. And quite frankly, for some of them, they take it personally in their own faith to say defend their own faith as well.
All right, do you have anything?
If there's something you could say to, small town Oklahoma, you hear the news, you don't know what to believe, what not to believe. This is such a big concern. Is there something you could say to those just confused?
Yeah, people are worried about ISIS and the movement of terrorism. Rightfully so. This is a real threat. If you want to go back to President Bush's statement after 2001, he made the statement over and over again. This is a different type of threat than what we faced as a nation before. It's not a nation state. It's not a particular army. It's a philosophy and an ideology, a group of people that they believe are going to dominate the world, and they're going to try to kill at random to be able to show their power.
Mm.
So it is a different type of experience for us. It's a generational war. This is not about retaking Iraq or taking Afghanistan and freeing that population from the Taliban. That ideology still remains. So we have to fight this on what the term is used as an asymmetric type war. We have to fight it on the area of ideas. We have to fight it on the internet and social media. We have to also fight it kinetically, where we actually have to be on the battleground and be engaged in that fight.
Okay, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, I tell people that the United States is still the strongest, most moral nation in the world. We live in fear at times because we see the brutality of others. The United States is capable of taking this enemy on. Our decision is, do we have the will to do it? Do we have the strategy to take that on? The President of the United States is responsible for military strategy. According to our Constitution, he is the Commander-in-Chief. You can't run a military operation from Congress or from the judiciary. It has to be run from the executive branch. We've seen that in Vietnam. We've seen that in other places where you've got lots of folks second-guessing all the time. So it's right that we get the strategy right. The president has to be able to execute this war correctly because lives are on the line.